All right, everybody. We are talking today about the language you use and how that makes a difference to your athletic career. So, we're going to get into the show pretty quickly. Before we do, though, you're welcome, everybody, for this glorious farmer stand. If you are watching live, if you are watching the video, you're welcome for this glorious farmer stand. I know it looks great. Spent a weekend out in West Loch, Alberta at a family reunion. I got to see my beautiful, hilarious little niece. So that was super, super fun. But that was a great time. Super happy I got to go back now with some super fun tan lines. Another one right along the side of my neck there. But now we're going to get into the show. We're going to be talking about changing your language around your athletic career. And we're going to get going in 3, 2, 1. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Elite Development Podcast, the number one show for athletes looking to gain an edge on their opponents and build their dream careers in sport. I'm your host, Kenny Dusseault, and today we are talking about changing your language around your athletic career and how changing that can have a drastic impact on your career itself. So the first thing I'm going to say is when I talk about changing your language, what I mean speaking more confidently. Obviously, there is never a guarantee in this kind of world. There's never a guarantee that you start a sports career and you're going to, be the next Conor McGregor, make your billions and do all of those kind of great things. But what I really want to understand is is that you have more control than you might believe. And that control starts with your mind. If you go through your career with the mentality of, I'm not sure how it's going to go, I'm not sure what I'm going to do, I'm not sure how far I'm going to make it, then you're probably not going to make it very far. And the reason you're probably not going to make it very far with that mentality is because, plain and simple, you're not putting out what you want into the world. And so if you're not sure how far you're going to make it, then when the training session comes around and you have the opportunity to push yourself a little bit harder, or the choice to do that, or, go home and relax and do whatever, which one do you think you're going to choose? Sometimes you might choose the, extra push and the going harder and all that. But when you don't want to, you're probably not going to choose it because you're speaking uncertainly. You don't know what's going to happen in your career. So you kind of take the easy way out more and more and more. Now, one of the things that is really important with that as well is you want to make sure that you're not using uncertain language because you want to make sure that you're setting yourself on the path to success. Every time I listen to a high-level athlete speak or anything like that, one of the things I noticed is all of them were certain that they were going to achieve their goals. Conor McGregor was certain he was going to become a double champ in the UFC. Think of him what you do now. I was a fan in his come up. I don't love the act now as much. But listening to early interviews of his and watching his documentary, McGregor Forever on Netflix, he very much knew right from day one. He's like, yeah, I'm going to be the next big thing. I'm going to, have my wife's going to have a car for every day of the week. My kids are going to be set for life. And then he went out and he did it. But he didn't come at it with the energy of, I think I might end up at the top one day. I hope that maybe one day I'm going to get there. No, he came at it with the energy of, it's already written, it's already done. Now I just need to go execute it. And by simply reframing that in your mind, you're going to get so much further because in your head, it's done. And I understand that you're not just going to wake up one day and magically believe in yourself and magically be at that point, but you've got to start saying it. One of the things that, just a quick example of this is at the start of every podcast, I say the number one podcast for athletes looking to gain an edge on their opponents and build their dream careers in sport. The reason I say the number one podcast is because I know that we're going to hit that point where this is the number one podcast for athletes that are looking to gain an edge on their opponents and build their dream careers in sport. Because I know the value we're delivering. I know the consistency with which I deliver it. And I understand that that means that we are going to get further and further and further. But that's also why I'm so excited to sit down and put together these episodes for you guys. And I'm so excited to, put the work and the effort into it and reinvest money into better equipment like this microphone. If you remember the early days of this show, I had no microphone at all. And then I went from no microphone at all to a crappy one that was sitting on the desk to now I have a top quality microphone. And I'm so excited to reinvest and put more into it and, improve the setup and do so many things with this show, because I know in my heart it is going to be the biggest show in this industry one day. The first time I said number one podcast when I was introducing the show, I didn't feel that. I didn't feel that because, there are so many big creators, there's so many great people in this industry. Who am I to say that? But the more and more I repeated it to myself, the more and more I continued to say it, the more I realized that, yeah, I'm not there now. But I continue to do what I'm doing. I continue to put the effort, the time, the love, the passion into this project. And we're going to get there. There's no doubt in my mind. But that came from reaffirming it with myself. And that came from changing the language. And that came from my mindset and how I approached doing the podcast. I'm not just throwing things out to throw things out. I'm putting so much more work and effort and time and love into it because I know what I'm capable of achieving with it. Does that make sense? So when you're talking to yourself about your athletic career, stop using words like maybe, I hope, I think, and start using the certain language. Start saying, I'm going to be a UFC champion one day. Start saying, I'm going to make millions of dollars competing in my sport. Start using that language because, yeah, there might be some people that roll their eyes at you, but the more you reaffirm that you are a future UFC champion, the more you are going to subconsciously start taking the actions that a future UFC champion would take. And the more you can reinforce that in your mind, the more you can reinforce that with your actions, the more and more and more you are going to start doing it every day. And the more you do it every day, the more likely you are to actually make it happen. Right? If you start saying to yourself, I'm going to be a UFC champion, does it mean you're going to become one? Of course not. But if you start affirming that in your mind, and then subconsciously you start taking the actions that a UFC champion would take, maybe you get to top 5 lifetime UFC fighter, not having to work another job, making millions of dollars, even if you never crack through to that belt. That's a way better future than the uncertain future, up and down, and maybe I'll get somewhere, maybe I won't, I think, I hope, I pray. You get what I'm saying? The language and the certainty that you speak with comes out in your day-to-day actions, which creates the future that you're looking for. Now, one of the big things that I did that helped me a lot with this in my own career, talking about the podcast, but even just my career as a coach, is I started reaffirming every single day things about myself that I wanted to be true. I started reaffirming I'm a strong and powerful leader. I started reaffirming I'm the number one coach on the market for combat sports athletes, strength and conditioning. Started reaffirming so many of these different things that now there's no doubt in my mind that I understand if I want something, I can achieve it. And the more I affirmed those things in my mind of being a strong and powerful leader, being the best coach on the market, owning the car that I now own that's sitting outside my apartment right now, the more I reaffirmed those things, the more I realized what the actions were that would allow me to actually achieve those things. The more I realized that if I want to be the number one coach on the market, like I say, then that requires a shit ton of effort. That requires more education. That requires continuing to work on myself as a person so I can better lead the athletes that I work with. So the same idea, just having a routine where you focus on these things every day, is going to be a massive, massive change in order to allow you to actually become that person. So the first thing, like I said, is my routine that I have every morning. The second thing as well is every single week on Sundays, I sit down and I set goals for the week. Now, those goals are business related. Those goals are health related. Those goals are relationship related. But those goals are just who I am looking to become by the end of this week, things that I want to do to make sure that I am moving towards becoming the person I want to become each and every single week. And the reason I do that, when I do that, what I sit down and I think is that version of me that's the best coach on the market for combat sports athletes, that version of me whose podcast is the #1 podcast in this space, that version of me who's making $1 million a year, that version of me, how would he approach this week? What would he need to focus on this week that's going to allow him to see the success that he wants to see? And that's how I think when I sit down and I set my goals. So for you guys, as athletes up and coming in your sport, start thinking the same way. When you sit down and you go to set goals for the week, that can be training focused goals, that can be work focused goals, that can be financial goals, whatever it is. When you go to set goals for the week, stop thinking about just, I'm going to work really hard. Like, yeah, no shit. But start thinking further. What kind of thing is someone in your position going to be able to do? You know, okay, I'm going to show up to training every single day, but to go even further, I'm going to bring food to work every single day so that I have something to eat before I train. Right? That little bit of going further is just leveling yourself up that much more. It's great to train hard every day. It's better to be fueled when you train every day. Right? So when you sit down to set those goals, start thinking about those little things you can do to separate yourself. And that is where the goal setting comes from. Right? So my challenge for you as we wrap up this podcast is think about your ultimate goal for your career. Whether that's UFC champion, whether that's millionaire, whether that's professional athlete, whether that's to become a coach down the road, whatever it is. Think about that ultimate goal that you have for your career. And then Sunday this week, take 30 minutes and sit down and set yourself 5 goals for the week that are going to put you closer to that ultimate goal. So that can be, like I said, something like making sure that I bring food to work every single day in order to be properly fueled for training. And the reason that process is important and you don't just decide that you're going to do it, but you actually sit down and write it out is because every time you do that, you're going to be more intentional. When you're getting ready if you do that on Sunday, now when you're getting ready for work on Monday, you're sitting and you're thinking, right, my goal was to make sure that I had food every day before training. Better make sure that I pack a little bit of food today. Right? And then reinforcing those goals every day allows you to put yourself in the position where you can start to look at your day more intentionally. You can start to make better plans. And as you make better plans, you continue to progress faster in your career. So guys, that is it. That is all. That is starting with your mind. That is being more intentional with your mindset, with your approach to your career, and just making sure that you're speaking more confidently to yourself and then becoming the person that you want to become within your career. So I hope you got some value from this. If you did, I'd love to know what it was. Make sure you drop me a comment if you're here live or watching it back on the video, listening back on the podcast. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast, follow me across all social media platforms, all that good stuff. And the big ask, as always, guys, is if you got value from the show today, make sure to share it with a friend, share it with a teammate, share it with somebody who needs to hear this message. As always, I appreciate you all. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will catch you on the next episode.